Hello, Alexandra here. This content is for folks interested in spiral dynamics or integral. And today's topic is intersubjectivity. Intersubjectivity is talked about in the book The Bonds of Love by Jessica Benjamin. And intersubjectivity describes the state of, quote, mutual recognition, where each person acknowledges the other as a distinct and equal center of experience, not, quote, merely an object of one's own mind. What does that mean? So, I was just in an integral group and we were discussing this, and the facilitator said this. For most people, they are relating with an object in their psyche, not the actual person. They are relating to the person they think they are. And he even talked about at green, we are projecting and we might not even see our own shadow. So, how does this relate to integral? Once a person has reached teal and integral or yellow and spiral dynamics, they are able to have this mutual recognition, this actual recognition of the other person, asking them questions and not assuming they think they know who the person is, or that they know what the person's lived experience is, or they know what their feelings are. And before then, green has a lot of empathy, especially if they've experienced something. But stage green and the stages prior to that, if they haven't experienced something, they tend to imagine what the other person is going through, and it's often quite inaccurate. And people are very obviously communal. Some stages are more communal than others, but even through all stages, we like to interact and have mutual recognition. There's sort of this myth that turquoise is some kind of superpower state, just in some kind of superpower union and communion. There is at late turquoise the park bench phase, but not at early turquoise or mid turquoise. We do like to be seen, we do like to relate, we do like to have a conversation, and what can happen is when we're talking to our stage green friends, especially maybe those who aren't not interested in the stage, they might mistake the stages as hierarchical when they're actually about growth hierarchies or becoming more whole. So if green has not really studied the stages, they can sometimes reduce or misunderstand or not see or not get, or even their teal or turquoise acquaintances or friends are somewhat invisible to them. And that is actually goes against the values of green, which is all about inclusion and throwing a warm blanket over people and having empathy for people. So early turquoise, and I can now speak about early turquoise. I want to give you a side note. There is an, I think, affordable way to find out what your center of gravity is stage-wise. I did the $45 class by Terry L. Fallon online called The 3 Questions, and then after that I did an affordable, much lower cost version of a mini assessment piggybacked onto her online course called, I think it's called The Gifts and Developmental Confusions. And that course is offered after you take the $45 initial course. So I did take the assessment. It verified I'm at early turquoise. I'm stabilized in early turquoise. As we know, there's like the beginning of turquoise, the middle of turquoise, and exiting turquoise, and they're all different. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think it is useful to validate that I am speaking from personal experience and not just imagining. Terry's online course, she does describe the confusions at each stage, and so it can be used as a self-help tool to help us get through these transitions and to help us know ourselves better and to help us sort of navigate where we're at, especially if it's new for us and we've sort of moved in or deepened into a stage. So that's a great resource, and I will include that in the notes. But yeah, so there's some kind of myth that like turquoise is like super special, and what has happened is that through doing inner work, a lot of inner work at green and a lot of inner work at yellow or teal and integral, and continuing to do some parts work, basically that natural progression as a direct result of that inner work has resolved some internal issues, and I'd say lowered the pain scale of triggers or have less triggers. But yeah, early turquoise still has triggers and parts, and obviously when we get to stage green, we value inner work as a lifestyle. So if you're at stage green and after that, you may relish inner work. Everybody does inner work at all stages. Not everybody, but everyone can do inner work at all stages. But green, starting with green, it tends to be a value, a core value of the stage. So why bother? I think most of us want to do a couple of things. We want to have less pain in our lives and be more grounded and be more comfortable in our own skin and resolve any type of emotional issue or triggers. It's nice to have life be a little softer, a little easier. Stage green can be a sensitive stage, and it can be kind of hard. In Suzanne Cook-Greuter's PDF, The 9 Levels of Increasing Embrace, green is a transitional stage. So the whole stage is in transition. And so people overlook the fact that green can actually be a difficult stage. So we're human. None of us like suffering. And the practical application of deepening in a stage or understanding the stage we're at or using the stages as a developmental tool and doing parts work and doing inner work is just that we're all human and we'd like to reduce our suffering and make life a little easier. And then the second component is we do broaden our context and increase our complexities and capacities as we move through the stages to better serve the world. So this is not a hierarchy, it's a growth holarchy. And I think people were just not taught about vertical development in our culture. I think the common knowledge, if it's common at all, but a lot of people know about Piaget saying that childhood ends at age 24, and I think some theorists say that the brain stops developing at age 26 or something. But no, it does not. It keeps developing, and I think more people would be curious about spiral dynamics and integral, more people at all stages, if they were just exposed to the usefulness of vertical development and appreciating that we can all improve our lives, we can use the stages in a practical way that I think most people, majority of the world, just has never been exposed to. So, but what's interesting is, this never occurred to me, but I was talking to my coach, who's at Late Turquoise, and she does my parts work for me. She's my coach and my parts work therapist. And she said, some people will transition into stage green without doing inner work. They'll just transition. And even though stage green tends to value inner work as a lifestyle, a lot of stage green folks just might not do it. And they might not be interested. Maybe they're not in enough pain, or they don't see the value of it, or they're not aware that doing inner work can sort of be the path to take us somewhere and deepen our context and make life richer and even more meaningful. So they may choose not to do inner work very much, or just lightly touch on it, and they may stay at stage green their whole lives. And it's important for stage teal and turquoise, apparently especially for stage teal, to remember not not to try to pull everybody up a hill and not to try to assume that everybody wants to be at teal. Teal can be a little bit overly enthusiastic. And I will say, if you listen to my video series on green moving to yellow or teal in integral, I sound very, very enthusiastic. And I did that intentionally. I'm very aware that there is a bonsai tree speaking at you and not a person. And so that fact that you don't know me, that I'm once removed, that this is a video you can pause or exit from, I think allows me in those videos to be more direct and more enthusiastic. I would never use the word to my friends or to anyone I know, like, you know what you can do and you must be aware of, and you can, and you really should be mindful. I would never speak to another human being like that directly. The word should and you is actually a little bit over enthusiastic, could be even a little controlling and obnoxious. But in a lot of integral groups, there is nobody really speaking the truth to stage green. And I think a lot of people who choose to watch those videos are hungry for resources, and they want to bypass the polite, like really vague, like stage green might not have intersubjectivity, which we acquire at stage teal. It's so much more useful to be direct and say, hey, stage green, you might be imagining empathy, and since you value inclusion, you might want to just check in with yourself, all of us, including me. We might want to check in with ourselves and make sure we're just not assuming things about other people, pigeonholing them into being a certain way, or thinking they're at a certain stage, or limiting what we think their capacities are because we've, quote, labeled them, or assuming we know their lived experience when we don't. And this does happen, with stage green folks I know. Teal, especially late teal, early turquoise, is, I'd say, pretty invisible. And so we also want to be included in the conversations and integral, and we want to play in the sandbox with the other kids. So one thing stage green can do, because especially stage greens who are in integral groups or in spiral dynamics groups are very curious, and they are highly motivated, and they're already familiarizing themselves with the stages. So what they can do is just remember that if they kind of get a sense that someone is at late teal, early turquoise, or late yellow, early turquoise, they can use that beautiful empathy, that beautiful warm blanket, to sort of hold a space for that person, and just understand that the transition into early turquoise can be very difficult. I've talked about that before. Terry O'Fallon says it's a 3-parameter shift, whereas it's switching a tier, it's switching how we relate to others, it's switching how we learn, whereas the other stages might only be a 1 or 2 parameter shift. So just understanding our differences and having true empathy for people in their lived experience. Remember, because of the small percentage of turquoise, less than 1%, or 0.5% of the population, it is by definition a minority. And as we know, minorities are generally misunderstood until there are activist groups and groups and books and people and all sorts of content that teaches those in the majority how to have sensitivity to a person's actual lived experience. I hope you found this content useful. Sending you love and blessings, and see you in the next video.